Great. Okay, so the topic I'm going to cover, or at least attempt to cover tonight, is Revelation, and we actually sort of started this class towards the end of last year and didn't get very far, and then restarted it with some additional people. So this is actually material that I covered last year, but I'm going to cover it slightly differently tonight. And anyway, I mean, it's not like once you've covered it, the subject is done. All right. So, Revelation, and what I want to say first of all, let me sort of back into this, okay? Because when we talk about Revelation, we're talking about essentially a text, right? I mean, there are still religions, or I should say there are religions which still believe in, direct verbal revelation today from God. The Mormons certainly do. And I don't know if anybody besides me in this room watched on Netflix the movie The Two Popes.
Oh, I was going to watch it.
Highly recommend it. Although I was disappointed to find out subsequently that although Pope Benedict and Pope Francis are real people, and Castel Gandolfo is a real place, as is the Sistine Chapel, none of what happens in the movie actually happened. But there's a certain point where Benedict is explaining to Francis why he's decided to retire, and he says, I no longer hear God's voice. Whereas if I came, I've said this before, so this coming Shabbos, I'm going to come in and say, God spoke to me, right? And God told me, yes, God wants us to use the B page. Right? Now, whether you are for the B page or against the B page, everybody's going to look and say, what the heck is wrong with the rabbi, right? That's not the way we do things, right? Nobody's going to say, oh, our rabbi is so wonderful. God speaks directly to him, right? That's not the way we do things, right? That's not, but there are some religions that still do that. I mean, the most classic example that I remember within my own lifetime is that up until about 1978, now in the Mormon Church or the Latter-day Saint Church, all males above a certain age are ordained priests, right? But for the longest time, Black people could not be ordained priests. And the Mormon Church was coming under a lot of pressure. And miraculously, the Lord spoke to the president of the church and said, from now on, you can ordain Black people. And so that now they do, because God told the president of the church, right? It's just not, right? It's not the way we work. Our revelation is found in texts, right? I mean, to give you like another example.
What if you did get a message, though? There's a burning bush in your front yard. Only you see it, and you guys, I don't think you could say it.
Right. You would say that I was schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You would say that I was schizophrenic. Right. But I raised this question. I don't remember if it was last Friday night or when, but I raised this question. So when we light the Hanukkah candles, right, what's the bracha that we say? Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah, right? Thank you, God, who has sanctified us by thy commandments and commanded us to kindle the lights of Hanukkah. And my question was, he did? Right? I mean, where did he say that? Right? If you want, I mean, in a way, it's almost impossible to say that he said that, because Hanukkah is not in the Bible, right? And we say that prophecy ceased after a certain time, right? And the whole story of Hanukkah took place after prophecy ceased, right? So how is it that we can say God told us to light the Hanukkah candles, okay? And the answer actually is very simple. There is nothing in the Torah nor in anywhere in the Tanakh nor any prophet who said, thou shalt light Hanukkah candles, right? But it says in the Torah, Lo tasur yamin usmo mimasha yorucha. You shall not deviate to the right or the left from what they teach you. In other words, the rabbis established the fact that rabbinic authority is in the Torah from God. And therefore, any rabbinic enactment is from God because rabbinic authority is from God. And therefore, any rabbinic enactment that is a positive time-bound commandment carries with it the blessing, right? I mean, we tend not to examine our practices that, at that granular level, right? But if you thought about it, right, where he commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah, where? Right? And the answer is when God commanded us to follow rabbinic authority. Yes, Mike.
The quote that you did in Hebrew, where did it come from? The one of not to the right nor to the left.
Right.
I would have to find it.
Torah.
No, it is in the Torah.
It is in
the Torah.
And it's talking about the rabbis in the future?
Yes, although certainly doesn't use the word rabbis, but the judges who will be in their day. It's probably from Deuteronomy. I could find it. I don't know off the top of my head, but I've given a drush on this. The whole idea of rabbinic authority comes from Deuteronomy, where it says to follow the judges who will be in those days. And then the question, why does it say the judges who will be in those days? Well, because they're the ones you got, right? They're the ones you got, and the judges are the rabbis. Right. I mean, and essentially that's true. I mean, the basic classic vocation of a rabbi is to rule on matters of Jewish law. Right. Everything else that we do is not the classic job of the rabbi. Right. The classic job of the rabbi is something that most contemporary rabbis do very little of. Right. But so rabbinic authority, again, you have to buy into the rabbinic system, obviously, but it's derived from Deuteronomy.
I think that's why I'm asking, because you're telling me that it's in the Torah.
Right, it's a circular argument. It's a circular argument.
Well, not if you believe the Torah comes from God.
Even if you believe the Torah comes from God, it does not necessarily follow that you must believe that every rabbinic interpretation of the Torah comes from God. You could be a Karaite.
But it says that. You just told me it says that.
It says you shall follow the judges who will be in your day. But who says the judges who will be in your day is the rabbis? Maybe the judges who will be in your day are Ginsburg and Breyer. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Great.
So you're not as definitive as it sounded that we are instructed in the Torah to buy into the system of the sages as God-given.
Well, as a rabbi, I'm deeply invested in it. As a non-biased scholar, I have to say it's less unequivocal. Okay, we'll get back to that when we talk about halacha and religious authority. Okay, because
when you're talking revelation, I would have thought that for starters, the one thing you could point to that's clear and obvious and absolute, maybe, is God giving Moses the Ten Commandments and the Torah on Mount Sinai. Something happened on Mount Sinai, and we normally refer to it as revelation.
Right.
And that's absolute. And I mean, I'm a fundamentalist, but I mean, even any I think most people would say that's how it was.
Well,
That's our revelation, isn't it?
let's get there, okay? But what I'm saying is that for Judaism, revelation is rooted in texts, okay? It's rooted in text. It's not, it's not your personal encounter with God, right? And it's not the encounter of some charismatic leader, be that, Jim Jones or Jerry Falwell or the head of the Mormon Church or Billy Graham or whoever. That's just not the way we operate. I mean, even the Lubavitcher Rebbe never said, "Well, God told me that we should do this." Right? That's not the way Judaism operates. Okay, so now you talk about the Torah. Yeah.
But the rabbis there had to have been an original core of rabbis, and so.
All right, I'm gonna say leave that aside because I sort of backed into that as not.
Okay.
I mean, that is a topic for another day. I'm not ignoring it. Let's leave it on the shelf and we'll take it down in 2 or 4 weeks from now. Okay. So the word Torah, right? Even somebody's at the door.
Okay.
Even if you say God revealed the Torah, right? What does the word Torah mean? What does the word Torah actually mean? Right? I mean, one of the things that we say, for example, okay, so most of you, actually all of you know me well enough, right? That I can be pedantic at times, right? But inevitably, come this Shabbat morning, somebody's going to say, we take out 3 Torahs this morning. And I'm going to try very hard to refrain myself from saying, no, we don't take out 3 Torahs. There's only 1 Torah, but we take out 3 Torah scrolls.
Right, or 3 Sifrei Torah.
Or 3 Sifrei Torah, because there's only 1 Torah, in the same way, that when you graduated from college, somebody asked to see.
Nobody?
Bobby was going out.
Oh, it was Bobby?
Yeah. I don't know
Right.
whether it was Bobby.
Asked to see your degree. And you can't show them your degree. You can show them your diploma, right? But the degree itself is tangible. The diploma is not the degree, right? And so there's 1 Torah, but we have many scrolls, but they all have the same Torah on it, right? But the word Torah has a lot of different meanings, okay? The literal meaning of the Hebrew word is teaching, okay? It's teaching and it's related. How do you say a teacher in Hebrew? Moreh or morah. Same root, okay? And also horim, parents, okay? Because the job of parents is to teach you, right? That is the primary job of parents. So the word Torah means teaching, okay? And when the Torah uses the word Torah, it means this teaching. It does not necessarily mean this collection of 5 books, okay? But the word Torah can mean a lot of things. It can mean the Pentateuch, the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. It can mean all of the Tanakh or the Bible. It can mean all of Jewish wisdom, right? I mean, if you ask somebody to give a Dvar Torah, right? And they, like last Friday night, my Dvar Torah, I spoke about Hanukkah, right? Nobody got up and said, Rabbi, that's not really a Dvar Torah because Hanukkah is not in the Torah, right? I mean, a Dvar, right? When you're teaching Torah, it doesn't have to be the Chumash. It doesn't have to be. It's any Jewish subject, certainly Jewish wisdom. That's all Torah. So Torah has a lot of different meanings. Okay, so now you said, Mike, that it's sort of basic. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a basic sort of core belief that the Torah was revealed at Mount Sinai, right? And I think it depends on what you mean by the Torah, okay? So if we want to look at the question of revelation, I think there are three questions to ask. One, is revelation possible? Right? Is it possible? Can God speak to human beings? Can human beings hear God? Is it possible? Did it in fact occur? And then the third question, if so, what was revealed? What's the content of the revelation? Okay, so I would say if we posit an omnipotent God, right, then revelation is certainly possible, right? The Bible portrays a God who reveals and creates, right? Or actually the three basic, and I've taught about this before, right? The three basic modes in which we know or relate to God are creation, revelation, and redemption, right? And in the Torah, God does all three things. Okay, now this immediately, I think, means that the God of the Torah is not the same God as the God of the philosophers, right? Because for whatever reason, God is not self-sufficient, right? I mean, God could sit up there and say, you know what, I'm God, right? I'm God. What do I need with all these people, right? And what do I need with giving them, with communicating with them, right? Let me be in my godness and I'll be very happy and I have no needs, right? I mean, we posit, right? I mean, philosophers posit that God is beyond need, right? Beyond need, beyond desire. But the God of the Bible, for whatever reason, needs the world, needs a community, and needs a relationship, right? Neil Gaiman says, one fact is clear, right? And he doesn't mean clear in the sense that it really happened, but one fact is clear in the Bible. God reveals because he cares passionately about human civilization. Our task is to decide how we feel about this image of a caring God, right? God reveals because God cares, right? God needs us. God needs us as much as we need God in the Bible. Okay, so, but we are faced with the limitations of human language. How can we think and speak of a reality that transcends the limitation of human perception? Right? So again, Rabbi Neil Gaiman, all our images and words about God are human creations. They are never literal photographs and never objectively true or false. All our God talk is metaphorical, right? I mean, you know about the parable of the blind men and the elephant, right? All the seven blind men describing an elephant, right? And they each touch a different part of the elephant, and one says, oh, an elephant, it's like a tree, right? And then the other one touches the tail and says, no, it's like a rope. And then the other one touches the trunk, and, oh, no, it's like a snake, right? Were they wrong?
That's why you have a jury. Seriously, that's the thought being that 12 people especially would perceive and can get to the truth and nothing gets by them. Or
right.
Not enough, so they can
right.
make a reasonable.
But are any of those blind men wrong?
No, but it's a combination.
Like, they're not wrong, but their descriptions are not wrong, but they're incomplete.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right? They're not wrong, but they're incomplete. Similarly, when I taught this material in college, and I taught it in a couple different colleges, right? So I would go into class early, pile up a bunch of books on my desk, right? And then I would leave. And I would come back a couple of minutes after class started, and I would knock all the books off my desk and say, everybody write what just happened. Right. And I don't know if they do this in law school too, but you would be amazed what people wrote. I mean, the one that I remember vividly is that this student had concocted this whole story about why I was upset and angry. Right. And because I was upset and angry, that's why I did what I did. Well, no, I mean, I know I did what I did purely because it was a thought experiment, right? But the point is, there's 20 people and they all saw the same thing, right? But there's 20 different accounts of what they saw, right? And even if you want to posit, right, that the event at Sinai is a historical event, right? How many people witnessed it? Right? According to the Torah, 600,000 adult men, right? Plus women, children, whatever. So 2.5 million people, let's say, right? 2.5 million people all saw the same thing. 2.5 million different descriptions of what they experienced, right? Because it's all human experience, right?
That's a jump.
Okay.
That's a jump. I mean,
it is absolutely a jump. It is absolutely a jump. And traditionalist or orthodox thinkers would deny that this is so, right? They would insist that the Torah is God's literal revelation, right? The Torah as we have it now is the literal revelation, word for word, immaculate, right, from God to Moses on Mount Sinai.
except for the fact that it includes Moses' death.
Well, then we have a problem, don't we?
Problem.
Right? Then we have a problem, don't we? Now, I will tell you, I mean, I was thinking about this before Minyan. When I was the rabbi in York, Pennsylvania, right, I had a confirmation class, a very small confirmation class, and we were talking about Revelation, and I asked them, I said, how many of you believe that the Torah is literally God's revelation to the Jewish people? They all said they do. And I said, well, then why don't you all live by it completely, right? I mean, I knew these kids, right? And 3 out of the 4 had kosher homes because that's what their parents had, right? But none of them observed Shabbat, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, if you think God said it, why don't you do it? Finally, one of the kids said, well, that's God's opinion. Right. But what's interesting is I thought back on that, of those 4 kids, 2 of them actually became Orthodox. And I consider that a victory in a way. I mean, even though I'm not Orthodox and don't, would not necessarily advise people, but they claimed that they believe something, and now they live in accordance with what they claim they believe, right? And so that, did I start them on that journey? Maybe, I don't know, right? But I think if that's what you believe, then that's what you should be, right? If
you were a perfect person, but if you're an imperfect person, as every human being is, then you have you could say an inability, a built-in inability to perfection, and for a variety, 100 different reasons, you end up being who you are, and it has nothing to do, in my humble opinion, with what you believe. I mean, it has to do with your level of ability and observance is the catch-all phrase for it. that's a different question than the basic belief system. Simply describes.
All right. I mean, I have to say, to me, that position is, I don't want to say unintelligible, but untenable. All right, to me, but I'm speaking personally to me, that if I, in other words, because you talk about perfection, nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. Everybody falls short, right? But the difference is, do you at least try to live up to the standards that you theoretically believe?
I mean, a
right?
lot of Jews, conservative Jews, identify themselves as conservative Jews because of this very issue, that I'm not Orthodox, therefore I don't have to, and then finish the sentence with whatever commandment you point to. I think that it's way more accurate to I describe myself as either observant or unobservant, but it has nothing to do with conservative or Orthodox. I see them as different. I mean, there are I don't think there's that many basic Jewish tenets that the Orthodox consider core beliefs and that the conservatives say that's wacko. I mean, I don't see it that way anyway, that we have evolved, or whatever the word
Right.
is, that the workarounds that we do. But they're modern, they're not rabbinic, so it's a complicated question.
Well, it is complicated question. It is complicated question, and that's why I'm teaching this class, right? And it is that I want to provoke you to figure out what you believe, right? And then optimally, once you figured out what you believe, to try and live by what you believe, whatever that might be. Alan.
I should have said this quite a bit of time ago, but you said that and you read the passage, the fellow believes that the Lord needs humans and needs them passionately and all. My thought is, and I don't know, and that's exactly where I'm going to end up tonight, and where I always end up, but we wanted the Lord to passionately care for us. We wanted to believe, or the people at that time, just like the people now, that there is some higher power. I believe there is, but I honestly believe that it's beyond my ken.
Mm-hmm.
I always use the example of an ant looking at the Empire State Building. It's just not going to happen. I mean, there are not enough ants to fill out that elephant. And I don't even know where I'm going with it, except that I don't know that the Lord needs us as much as we have a need to have a higher being need us.
All right. So, I think, anthropologically, you may be correct, right? I mean, there are certainly people who maintain that all religions are human creations.
What's the paragraph we read on Friday night that addresses this very thing? We read it in English.
Probably not leaking.
No. It's a modern Hebrew. Right. I know what you're talking about. If you bring two Sidurim, we'll both look for it, and whoever finds it first.
We're going to play
Because
music.
it really
and then,
is written in declarative, with declarative verbs, as opposed to hopes and wishes and stuff.
You're talking about on the bottom of 31. You are my witnesses, says God. There is no king without a kingdom. No, right. Okay. Well, I'll read that. All right. This is from Rabbi Jules Harlow, and it is, it's a supplementary reading. Okay. But it's based in rabbinic literature. You are my witnesses, says God. There is no king without a kingdom, no sovereign without subjects. When you are my witnesses, I am Adonai. The coin of God's kingdom is Torah, to be reflected in study and deeds. God is the first, God is the last. There is no God but Adonai. The Torah is given each day. Each day we receive it anew if we wish to make it our own. Testify for me, says Adonai, in your love for me, teach your children, embracing the Torah now and forever. We accept God's sovereignty and reverence, treating others with love, studying Torah. May this be our will as we witness.
Yeah, and that appears in the Shema
Right.
as a supplementary reading after the Vayomer paragraph.
Right. And I'm sorry, but what was the point that you were...
I mean, it's saying that God needs us.
It's saying that God needs us, right? God is not God, right, if we're not God's people, right? There's no king without a kingdom,
Exactly.
right? And if you think about it, right, I mean, the point is, I think that what Gilman would describe is that the Bible describes a God who cares. The Bible describes, I mean, it's all through the prophetic material, right? God is sad because we went astray, right? Now, what kind of omnipotent, omniscient, all-sufficient being gets sad, right? I mean, but God is sad because we go astray, and God calls, come back, come back, come back,
But
right?
that's from our perspective. It's from our perspective that we. Again, I'm in an area that I don't know at all, but it's from our perspective that that's an emotion we have to go out that way. That the superior being would be sad.
Right. All that I'm saying is that's the picture that the Bible paints.
All right, I'll go.
Okay. I think that is a fact. Whether it is a good picture, an accurate
I hear you.
picture, what is the origin of the picture, that's a different question. Right. But the picture that the Bible paints is of a God who cares passionately.
All right.
Right. And if you look at, the sort of the classic work of Abraham Joshua Heschel, right? One of the clearly most important theologians in the conservative movement, although widely accepted in Orthodoxy as well. God in Search of Man, right? God in Search of Man, right? So, I don't know how we got. Oh, but
I caused it. I think
that's
it was
okay. But the biblical portrait of God, I mean, is of a God who cares, a God who loves, a God who needs, a God who learns, right? A God who's, I made a mistake, let me try again, right? The flood, right? I made a mistake. Nichamti ki asitim. I regret that I made them. What kind of omnipotent, right? Omniscient, God, I made a mistake. Well, if you're omniscient, didn't you know that we would act? And then after the flood, God said, you know what? You guys can't help it, right? You can't help it. I'm not going to do it again, right? Well, you didn't know before the flood that we couldn't help it, right? I mean, but
He gave us free will.
he gave us free will, but
that's the point.
But he learns, right? I made a mistake. Wait, now I made a mistake in thinking that I made a mistake, right? So I'm not going to do it again, right? Okay, now.
But that's a super parent. In a way, and again, the order of magnitude is completely different. But a parent does the best they can. They try to set things on a path. And now and then you make a mistake. I shouldn't have smacked your fingers because you went near the electricity. I should have dealt with it a different way. And you learn, and you both develop.
Right. All right. So now, okay. I just want to move on, right? Because I think we're talking two different things.
Yeah, we are. I know.
Now you pointed out first of all, the problem that, if it's a little odd, right, to posit that the Torah in its entirety, as we have it now, and that's important too, it's as we have it now, was given by God to Moses at Sinai. So, according to then Moses wrote down his own death. He wrote his own death, he wrote his burial, etc., etc., etc. Right? Which I suppose, is not impossible. Not impossible. Right.
The Hasidim would say the Torah was written before creation.
Right.
And so.
Well, not
it
just the
was simply
Hasidim.
dictated, and over the 40 years, it got burped out and put onto a piece of paper.
Right. That's certainly not just a Hasid. That is an ancient rabbinic idea, right? That the Torah is the blueprint of creation, all right? That it says, and in Aramaic, okay, Histakla ba'oraita uvara alma, right? God looked in the Torah and created the world, right? That the way God knew how to create the world is to look in the Torah, right? That the Torah pre-existed everything. And since you went there, that idea is reflected in the Gospel of John as well. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's the pre-existing Torah, right? And all of that is fine rabbinic doctrine. It's when the Word became flesh, right? That's where we know. Okay, but the first, John, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph is perfectly good, rabbinic doctrine. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was, right, that's the pre-existing Torah, God. So absolutely, right? But what I find personally fascinating is that the claim that Orthodoxy makes for the Torah is not a claim that the Torah makes for itself. The Torah never says, I was revealed in my entirety by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. The Torah itself never makes that claim. Right? The Torah claims that the Ten Commandments were revealed. Right? The Torah claims that God appeared on Mount Sinai. The Torah claims that subsequent to Mount Sinai, Moses was up there for 40 days and 40 nights, and God gave him all kinds of laws. Right? But the Torah never says that it in its entirety was revealed to Moses at Sinai. That is a later claim that is made for that document. Okay, now, what are arguments for that position? Okay, one, simply accept it on faith. Right, that's what Judaism is. Two, there's Bible codes. Okay, Aish HaTorah used to be really big on Bible codes. Okay, they don't do it so much anymore. Bible codes means that if you feed the text of the Torah into a supercomputer, right, and you tell it every 12th letter, right, and then every 12, and it'll be some sort of coherent message, right, and only God could write those kind of things into the Torah. All right, and I remember very clearly that after Rabin was assassinated, the Aish HaTorah people showed how Rabin's assassination was predicted by Bible codes. To which my response was, it would have been nice to know this before and not after.
You might have told Rabin. Yeah.
Right? Would have been nice to know this before and not after. Right? But then, other scientists, they found their own laundry lists in the Torah too, right? So, I haven't seen much Bible code stuff lately because I think it's not critical. It's not credible, rather.
Are you including, what is it called, numerology in this?
No, I'm not talking about gematria.
Gematria, that's the word.
I'm not talking about gematria. Gematria is just fun. I don't think people are not deriving halachot on the basis of gematria, right? Nor are they claiming divinity. I mean, if you want to claim divinity, right, on the basis of gematria, right, I can prove to you on the basis of gematria that conservative Judaism is superior to Chabad. Okay, what is
Everybody know what we're talking about?
right? Gematria is, is numerology, like you said. What is the address of the headquarters of Chabad?
770 Eastern Park.
770 Eastern Parkway, right? What is the headquarters of conservative Judaism? 3080 Broadway. 4 times 770 gives you 3080. Okay, conservative Judaism is 4 times as holy as Chabad. Right, it's nonsense, right? It's fun. It's fun, but 770 times 4 gives 3080, right? It's a clear sign from God,
I hired that expert one time.
right?
We used to have a guy in school, Larry Froelich.
Yeah.
And when he would do a Dvar, he would do it with gematria. I never knew where he got it from. I mean, it was fascinating.
Right. I mean,
I
since
didn't know what to make
since
of it.
the advent of the internet, there are gematria calculators. You
It's
can
gotta
go.
be.
There are. Now, what's more serious, I think, is Yehuda Halevi's argument in the Kuzari about the public nature of the Sinai revelation, right? In other words, because the Kuzari, Halevi is trying to prove rationally that Judaism is superior to Christianity and Islam. Okay. The revelation at Sinai, who saw it? 2.5 million people, right? Jesus' resurrection, who saw it? 12 people, right? The Quran's revelation, who heard the Quran's revelation? 1 person,
Yeah.
right? Muhammad, right? You can fabricate that. You can't fabricate a public revelation before 2.5 million people, right? Because if you try to, this is Halevi's argument, okay? I'm not, you can say it doesn't hold water, and I won't necessarily disagree with you, but says that, in other words, Muhammad could have lied. Muhammad could have lied,
Yeah.
right? Or been mistaken,
Right.
No witnesses.
right? The 12 people who saw Jesus after his supposed resurrection could have lied, right? Or could have been mistaken, or it could have been introduced a generation later. How do we know Jesus was right? Well, these 12 people saw him, right? But you can't, Halevi says, you can't introduce a generation, 2 generations, 3 generations down the road Sinai. Why? Because people would have said, well, wait a second. Let me finish, okay? Wait a second. My Zaidi was supposedly there, right? And if my Zaidi was there, he surely would have told me, right? I mean, this was a big deal. I mean, I know, for example, that my Zaidi was at the Lewis Schmeling fight. Okay, because he told me, right? It's a big deal. Okay, if my Zaidi had been present when God revealed himself on Sinai, he would have told me that too, right? So you can't introduce a public revelation that allegedly took place before 2.5 million people.
What did they say? What is the revelation?
Okay, right. No, but that's a different question,
Yeah.
right? That's a different
But I mean,
question.
that argues for the validity of our religion. It does not speak at all intelligently to the comparison, the invidious comparison that the guy is making counting people who witness. I mean, that should not be the takeaway. The takeaway should simply stand on its own feet, that this is what happened to us at Mount Sinai, and it was between us and God.
Right.
Punto, punto.
Right. And I would say that, in a much later era, that is precisely Lord Jonathan Sacks's argument, right? Where he is arguing for religious pluralism. And he says, Sacks's argument, and I've spent time with him. It doesn't mean I'm paraphrasing him accurately, but I think I am. The revelation at Sinai was real, and he, as an Orthodox rabbi, would say, in its entirety, et cetera, but it was directed at Jews. It was not directed at the whole world. It was directed at Am Yisrael, and it does not preclude the possibility that there were other revelations to other groups of people. Right. Now, of course, he got roundly attacked by his Orthodox brethren for having the audacity to suggest that Christianity or Islam could also be rooted in authentic revelation. But to me, it's a very attractive argument, right? But that's not the era in which Halevi was living. Right? It's not the era in which Halevi was living. He is not a religious pluralist, right, by any stretch of the imagination. But nobody was a religious pluralist back then, right? The whole postulate was, if my religion is true, other religions are therefore false, right? And you're shaking your head, but that's what
they believe.
That's what everybody believed until 60 years ago. Right? If my religion is true, your religion is false. Right? It's really since
More of a zero-sum game.
right, but it's only. This whole idea of religious pluralism is really only going back, 60, 65 years. We take it for granted because it's the way we live, but it's not. That's a new era. Okay, so I am now going to spend the next 6 minutes, right, discussing challenges to the traditionalist position. Okay, higher criticism and lower criticism. Okay, higher criticism is what's also known as the documentary hypothesis. All right, that the Torah is woven from different documents, from different times, different eras, different agendas, right? And it is possible to separate the Torah into its different documents in the same way that, if you look at the Federalist Papers, right, you can tell who wrote which Federalist paper, but some of them, two different people wrote, right? And so we have a documentary hypothesis of the Federalist Papers, and we have a documentary hypothesis of the Torah, that the Torah consists of 4 documents, J, E, P, and D. J is basically because it was in Germany. So J, if it had been in an English-speaking country, it wouldn't be the J document; it would be the Y document, right? But these are the Torah sources, the Torah stories that call God Yud He Vav He, right? And then there's the E document, which calls God Elohim. And in places where it says Yud He Vav He Elohim, right, that is the weaving together. That is the weaving together. Then there's the priestly source, which is mostly Leviticus, which deals with stuff that's important to the priests and ritual purity and so on and so forth. And then the D source, Deuteronomy, which is like a totally different thing altogether. and then they were brought together by R, the redactor. Okay, and another sort of form of higher criticism is ancient Near Eastern text, right, where we compare the Torah to, let's say, the Code of Hammurabi or the Epic of Gilgamesh or and we say, well, these are where it's similar and these are where it's different and so on and so forth, but it's an ancient text like any other ancient text, right? That's the higher criticism. The lower criticism says, yes, it was revealed by God, but it was copied by people over the centuries. Scribes could have made mistakes, right? Or there could be glosses, right, where the scribe worried that something was unclear. So instead of just copying it, he put a couple of things in there to make it a little bit clearer. Okay. Or ditographies, where a word was copied twice. There are some places where you see a word was copied twice and it doesn't make sense, right? Or you see a text that doesn't make sense, but if you take the dalet out of the word and put a resh in instead, and dalet and resh look pretty similar, the text suddenly makes sense, right? Or you take out the resh and put in the dalet. Right? Stuff like that. Okay. The problem is that once you, and by the way, this position is held by, like, for example, David Weiss Halivni. Okay. David Weiss Halivni, one of the greatest contemporary Torah scholars, childhood friend of Elie Wiesel. They grew up together. He taught at JTS, and when JTS started ordaining women, he left JTS and went to Columbia, right? And Rabbi Halivni, Rabbi David Novak, and a couple other people, they are the founders of what became the Union for Traditional Judaism, okay? Which almost doesn't exist anymore. But Halivni's position is that the Torah was indeed revealed to Moses at Sinai, but we allowed errors to creep into the text. Okay, we allowed errors to creep into the text, okay? But the minute you say that, you're outside of orthodoxy, because the minute you say, well, everything is true except maybe this one thing, well, how do you determine, well, maybe everything is true, but these two things, right? If it could be one, it could be two. And if it could be two, it could be 10. And if it could be 10, maybe it could be 20. Right? And if it could be 20, well, maybe it was a mistake when they said that men can't have sex with men anymore, because now we know, right? And once you go down that road, ein la davar sof, right? There's no end to it, right? And so it seems to me that that's where you get stuck, right? In other words, the minute you say it's all from God except this one thing, which I'm pretty sure is not, right? On what basis is except Goldman's one thing, okay, but not except Katz's one thing, right? I mean, the minute you put a human element in, then there's no reliable way to say what is a human element and what is not a human element, right? And therefore, I mean, it's pretty much a binary. As much as I dislike binaries, I think you either buy that position or you don't buy that position, right? And then once you don't buy that position, everybody has their own perspective on what is exactly divine and what is not divine, but there's no logical way to prefer your perspective on what's divine than my perspective and on what's divine, right? And so, hopefully I have, but okay.
So it's one thing to recognize that a dalet and a resh could be typographical, and a ditto could be typographical. It's another thing when you would be willing to accept that basic tenets clearly enunciated in the Torah are not divine, meaning, and depending on how you want to use the word divine, but are disposable. Okay, that to me is a leap. It's the Torah. We treat the Torah like it's God's word. We drop it, we fast for 40 days. We treat it like it's absolutely holy. We don't get caught up in the weeds when we do this, because we do it out of a basic belief, and that's where we are, and that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
The Orthodox would say every word of it is God-given. We don't know. We're easier on that, and it is I think it is absolutely unimportant, except that we all agree that the basic tenets in the Torah are immutable, are God-given. When I say God-given, I'll even take it a step further, are central to our religious belief. Okay. It's not, we pick and choose, but we don't pick and choose generally. I'm going to get caught in this. Generally, among basic tenets, there are exceptions. We don't believe the Torah meant it when it told us if our kid is bad, take him outside and stone him.
Right, but neither do the Orthodox.
But
now.
but the Torah, either you, as you posited, either you buy into it or you don't, because you can't cherry pick. And there are things in the Torah that you might want to take issue with, you might want to think through,
Mm-hmm.
you might need to come up with a workaround, and it doesn't stop us from buying into that the Torah has our basic tenets of belief as Jews.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I agree 100%, right? And that's where there's a different binary, okay? In other words, some Orthodox rabbis, not all, but some, particularly those who are trying to do Keruv, who are trying to convince you to become Orthodox, will say, Mike, will say exactly what I said, essentially, which is to say, once you introduce the possibility that there could be even one mistake in the text, right? It's the camel's nose under the tent, right? If there's one, why not two? And if there's two, why not 10? And if there's 10, why not 100? Right?
When
So,
I was a kid, my rabbi told me, if you buy the set of clothes and there's this one thread that's in the way,
right,
and you pull it, the arm sleeve falls.
right.
And
So
then you look over here and there's another
right.
thread, and you pull
so
it before you know you're naked.
either you buy the whole package or not at all. Or not at all. Right? And I'm sorry, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. I mean, having said that, it becomes very difficult for any person to logically insist. So you say the central tenets are given by God. All right? And I agree with you, right? But
Or by
no,
Moses. I mean, it could be
but
he
the
was a
point,
really
Meeting.
smart
the
guy.
right, the point, well, but the point is, what are those central tenets, right? I mean, to me, the central tenet is Zachor ki eved hayita be'eretz Mitzrayim. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt. That is the central tenet of the Torah, and it is the statement that is more repeated than anything else in the Torah, 36 times, right? And if you look at the basis of what most Jews consider their identity, right, that's key, right? But who am I to insist that my perception of what is the central tenet is more accurate than your perception or yours, right? I mean, it becomes purely subjective, right? Now, subjective is not bad, right? I think subjective is all we have, right? But we crave certainty. Most people crave certainty, right? And I would say that once you introduce, I mean, Halivni's term is the immaculate text, right? Immaculate means without imperfection. Maculate means with imperfection, right? So Halivni says God gave us an immaculate text, but it is now maculate because of our own sins, right? Once you introduce the possibility of macula in the text, how are you to determine that, well, no, that one I'm sure comes from God? And I say, no, Goldman, you're wrong. That doesn't come from God, but this one does. There's no, and you can believe it, or you can create a whole structure of Jewish religiosity on it, but you can't prove it, is all I'm saying. You can't prove it. It's just an assertion. Barnaby.
Well, for one, I think this slippery slope argument betrays quite weak faith in that if your belief in Revelation is based on textual perfection over the generations, and if it's revealed that two different versions of the Torah have at least a 1 or 2 letter difference in this, their separate communities, then the Ammonites have a vav where we have a hey, or vice versa. Then the slippery slope goes. Then the text wasn't copied faithfully. Then we can't ever know if the entire thing was revealed or not. That's several 100,000 letters worth of similarities. Let's not forget the so-called the heterodox versions of the Torah in the Septuagint, the Samaritan Torah. There's 5 or 6 Episcopal aside, the overall structure is still the same.
Right. I mean that's also true, but it argues for the ancientness of the text. It argues for the fact that Am Yisrael tried really, really, really hard to get it 100% correct. But it also argues that we didn't get it 100% correct. We got it 99.8% correct, which is pretty good. I'm not trying to deconstruct anybody's faith here. The point is, I'm also don't want to build faith on a weak foundation.
Right.
Right? And I think personally, the assertion that the text that we have now is 100% identical to the text that was revealed to Moses at Sinai is a weak foundation on which to build your house.
Agreed.
That's all I'm saying, right? So I haven't gotten yet. I thought I would, but I always think I'm going to cover more than I manage to, and that's your fault. It's not my fault. Having collapsed that edifice, 2 weeks from now we'll start rebuilding. Okay? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
One last thing I want to say is that I definitely find a lot of meaning in the rabbinic adage that the Torah is